My name is Daisy Knox. I am 34 years old, and 7 years ago, my family ghosted me over a venomous lie manufactured by my younger sister. They missed my residency graduation, erased me from their lives, and never once asked for my side of the story. But the universe has a brutal, poetic way of balancing the ledger. Last January, during a blinding Boston blizzard, my phone buzzed with an emergency page. A patient was rushed into my trauma bay, suffocating and unrecognizable from a catastrophic, back-alley cosmetic procedure gone wrong. It was Lily, the golden child who destroyed my life. Running right behind her gurney were my parents, sobbing and begging me to save her. Completely unaware that the chief trauma surgeon holding their daughter's life in her hands was the very child they had discarded in the cold. They thought they could use my medical license to cover up a massive insurance fraud. But they had no idea I was holding a paper trail that would strip them of everything. Welcome back to Her Dignity Stories, where ordinary women set quiet, unbreakable boundaries that shift the balance of power, and self-respect always gets the last word. Before I tell you about the night the truth finally spoke for itself under the sterile lights of the operating room, please take a moment to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. Sit back, leave the noise of the world behind, relax with this peaceful countryside view, and listen to my story. The red trauma lights were flashing, casting a bloody glow over the bay at Boston Medical Center as the ambulance doors slammed open. The air inside the room was a chaotic symphony of monitors beeping and nurses cutting through clothing, thick with the sharp, clinical smell of antiseptic and old blood. The paramedic was shouting a frantic report about anaphylactic shock, a collapsed airway, and severe facial tissue necrosis from an unlicensed silicone injection. I stepped up to the gurney, my face hidden behind a heavy surgical mask and protective goggles. My mind locked into that cold, hyper-focused state every trauma surgeon develops to survive. But when I wiped the fluid from the patient's swollen face to secure an emergency intubation, my heart hit the floor. It was Lily. Before the shock could even register, the double doors burst open and my mother lunged into the bay, her expensive coat stained with melting snow, her face distorted with terror. My father was right behind her, holding her up, his chest heaving as he stared at the monitors. 7 years of absolute, weaponized silence. And here they were, standing less than 2 feet away from me. They didn't look at my eyes. They didn't recognize my voice as I barked orders to the nursing staff to hang epinephrine. Instead, my mother fell to her knees on the sterile linoleum, grabbing the hem of my surgical scrubs with trembling hands, weeping hysterically. "Please, Chief Doctor, you have to save her," she screamed, her voice echoing off the stainless steel counters. "She's our only daughter. She's our whole world. Please don't let our baby die." They were praying to a stranger for a miracle, entirely blind to the fact that the ghost from their past was the only one who could give it to them. I managed to secure Lily's airway, but as the ventilator took over, my mind forced me back to the night my family died to me. It was 7 years ago, right in the middle of my final exams at Boston University School of Medicine. I was sitting at my tiny desk, surviving on black coffee and cold pizza, studying for my board exams. My phone rang at 11:30 p.m. It was my dad. His voice was flat, cold, and stripped of any fatherly warmth. "Get on the next bus to Cape Cod, Daisy," he said. "We need you home immediately." I panicked, thinking someone was dying. I threw some clothes in a duffel bag and caught the midnight Greyhound bus. When I walked into our living room, nobody embraced me. My parents sat on the sofa like a corporate board, and Lily was smirking in the corner. She wanted to open a luxury medical spa in downtown Boston. The startup cost was staggering. My dad cleared his throat and delivered the blow. They had emptied my educational trust fund to cash out Lily's business dream. Every single dollar meant for my medical school tuition was gone. I stood there, feeling the air leave my lungs. That was my tuition. Dad, I whispered, how am I supposed to pay for my final year? That is when Lily pulled out her phone to deliver the ultimate twist. She had created a fake email, spoofing the domain of the Boston University Medical School dean. The forged letter stated I had been expelled for academic dishonesty and exam cheating. It was a complete fabrication, but my parents didn't look for proof. They wanted to believe it. They used that fake email to paint me as the family disgrace to all our relatives. It gave them the perfect excuse to strip my funding without looking like monsters. Then my dad slid a legal document across the coffee table. It was a quitclaim deed. They forced me to sign away my future inheritance of our family's Cape Cod house to Chuaktoa for my alleged shame. I was trapped, broke, and betrayed by my own blood. They stole my past. But as I looked at Lily on that operating table, I knew they hadn't stolen my future. Signing that paper was the day I officially became a ghost to my own blood. They kicked me out of the house that same night. I packed everything I owned into 2 canvas duffel bags with broken zippers. My financial aid officer told me my federal student loans wouldn't cover the missing trust fund money. I was staring down a mountain of high-interest tuition debt just to stay in school. I refused to let them ruin my dream of becoming a doctor. So, I started surviving on 4 hours of sleep and pure adrenaline. I took 3 different part-time jobs just to make my monthly tuition installments. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., I was a barista at a tiny coffee shop near Kenmore Square. My fingers always smelled like burned espresso beans and cheap dish soap. Right after morning classes, I dragged a heavy plastic janitor cart across the medical campus. I scrubbed toilets, emptied trash cans, and wiped down mirrors in the undergraduate dorms. From 11 o'clock p.m. to 3 o'clock a.m., I worked as a night shift lab monitor at the university hospital. I sat under buzzing fluorescent lights, checking refrigerator temperatures and filing blood vial logs. My feet ached constantly in my worn-out New Balance sneakers. I bought generic store-brand white bread and peanut butter on clearance at the local grocery store. Christmas Eve that year was freezing, and the wind was howling through my drafty studio apartment. I sat on my mattress on the floor, wrapped in a stained wool blanket, eating instant chicken ramen. I opened Instagram on my cracked phone screen just to see a notification. My mother had posted a photo. The entire family was sitting at a corner table at a historic, expensive steakhouse in downtown Boston. They were celebrating the grand opening of Lily's luxury medical spa. Lily wore an expensive designer dress, and my parents were beaming beside her with champagne flutes. The caption read, "The perfect family when there are no liars at the table." The words hit me like a physical punch in the stomach. I turned off my phone, stared at the dark ceiling, and let the cold tears burn my cheeks. But the ultimate twist came 2 weeks later when I opened my first formal credit bureau report. I was checking my financial standing to apply for an emergency medical student loan. My credit score had completely plummeted into the red. I found a series of fraudulent commercial credit lines opened under my social security number. Someone had used my identity to register importation documents with U.S. Customs. They bought 10 high-end cosmetic medical lasers and a massive shipment of unapproved dermal fillers from overseas. The shipping destination on the customs manifest was listed right here in Boston. My chest went tight because I knew exactly who had stolen my identity to bypass medical regulations. But I was drowning in my final exams and working 3 jobs just to buy groceries. I didn't have the time, the money, or the mental energy to hire an investigator or fight back. I filed the fraud report away in a cheap plastic binder, buried the anger deep down, and kept grinding. I hid that paper trail away for years, waiting for the day I had the power to make them answer for it. That day arrived much later, during a chaotic shift when my past finally caught up with me under the emergency room lights. I survived that dark year, finished my medical degree, and entered my residency program with zero help. 2 years ago, I finally graduated at the top of my residency class as the chief resident. The auditorium was packed with happy families holding flowers, balloons, and snapping pictures. I stood on that stage alone, looking at the crowd. But my parents' seats were completely empty. They didn't show up. And they didn't even bother to send a simple text message. That same night, during my celebratory shift at Boston Medical Center, I met Ethan. He was a brilliant staff psychiatrist with sharp brown eyes and a calm way of listening. We started drinking bad hospital coffee out of styrofoam cups and talking about our pasts. I told him about the Cape Cod house and the strange customs report I found during my survival years. Ethan leaned back, his clinical instincts clicking in, and looked at me seriously. Daisy, as a doctor, your identity is your most valuable asset, he warned. You need to run a deep check on your medical credentials and tax history right now. I went back to my apartment and logged into the Massachusetts Medical Board database. My medical eye caught the discrepancies immediately, and a cold chill ran down my spine. Lily's luxury medical spa was thriving in the Back Bay district of Boston. She was charging wealthy clients thousands of dollars for premium Botox and dermal fillers. But according to the official state registry, Lily Knox didn't hold any medical license at all. She was a high school graduate running invasive cosmetic procedures entirely illegally. She papered over the illegality by telling her elite clients she was supervised by Dr. Knox. She used our identical last name to deceive the public and the local health inspectors. But the ultimate twist was buried inside my commercial insurance indemnity portal. Lily had pulled my old university medical school registration data from 7 years ago. She used those stolen academic records to forge a professional medical malpractice indemnity policy. She submitted this fake insurance document to overseas vendors to buy cheap, unapproved medical equipment. She bought commercial lasers and black market silicone by pretending I was the managing partner. She deliberately set the business up so I was the legal shield for her illegal operation. If a laser malfunctioned or a client suffered a severe disfigurement, the lawsuit would hit me. She stole my education, used my identity as a corporate shield, and left me exposed to a felony. I didn't confront them. Instead, I downloaded every single invoice, customs form, and forged document. I spent months tracking the paper trail, waiting for the trap to spring on its own. I had no idea the collision would happen inside my own emergency room, right under my surgical lights. Having all that evidence locked away in my desk changed how I looked at my family forever. 1 month before that chaotic night in the ER, the trap finally sprang. I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria during a rare 10-minute break, drinking cold tea. My phone buzzed with an urgent email notification from Ridgeline Insurance, our federal medical malpractice provider. It wasn't a standard update. It was a formal audit ultimatum. A wealthy woman in Beacon Hill had suffered a catastrophic facial nerve injury at Lily's spa. The victim had filed a $1 million malpractice claim, and my name was listed as the chief medical supervisor. The insurance company demanded a full legal deposition from me within 30 days. If I didn't respond, the state would freeze my medical license and report me to the federal database. My chest went dead cold, but my hands didn't shake as I closed my laptop. I didn't pack a bag, drive down to Cape Cod, or scream at my parents over the phone. I didn't give them a single hint that I knew what they had done. Instead, I spent my entire savings account to retain a veteran medical defense attorney named Marcus Webb. We quietly partnered with the Massachusetts Board of Registration in Medicine to start an official investigation. We began drafting what the court calls a credential verification and forensics report. We pulled corporate bank filings, state licensing registries, and internet IP addresses. I spent my post-shift nights in Marcus's downtown office, looking at scanned signatures under a desk lamp. We were building an airtight wall of paper to prove I had never set foot inside Lily's illegal spa. But the ultimate twist was waiting for us inside the small business loan applications from Boston National Bank. Lily's spa had been hemorrhaging cash for over a year due to bad Yelp reviews and high rent. She needed a $500,000 commercial line of credit just to keep the doors open. I looked at the co-signer's signature lines on the loan documents and felt my stomach violently drop. It wasn't just Lily's handwriting on those fraudulent bank applications. My parents had signed their own names as personal guarantors on the loan. They had actively sat at their kitchen table, watched Lily forge my medical credentials, and signed right next to it. They used my hard-earned identity as collateral to bail out Lily's failing business. They knew a single accident would destroy my career, and they simply didn't care. They risked my entire life for Lily's comfort, and they did it with a smile. I added those bank records to our official board report, sealed the binder, and waited for the perfect moment. I had no idea the paper trail would detonate exactly 1 month later, right under the bright lights of my own operating room. The cold reality of that forged loan agreement was still burning in my chest when I walked back into the operating room. I spent 4 agonizing hours under the harsh surgical lights fixing Lily's desperate mistake. The black market industrial silicone she injected had triggered severe sepsis and massive tissue death. My hands stayed perfectly steady as I cut out the infected areas and repaired her damaged facial nerves. I did my job with absolute, sterile professionalism, because that is what a chief trauma surgeon does. When the monitor finally stabilized, I stepped out into the quiet hallway and pulled off my surgical mask and cap. My parents were pacing by the waiting room doors, their eyes red, smelling like cheap hospital coffee and cold sweat. They lunged toward me, but as their eyes adjusted to the light, they completely froze. My mother's jaw dropped, and my father staggered back against the wall, his face turning an eerie, chalky white. The sheer horror in their eyes was deafening as they realized the daughter they disowned was the only reason Lily was alive. 7 years of ghosting me, and they were looking at a ghost who held all the cards. But instead of shedding a single tear of remorse, my mother rushed forward and grabbed my bare wrists with freezing hands. She leaned in so close I could smell the stale mints on her breath, and she whispered something so wicked it made my blood run cold. "Daisy, thank God it's you. You're the chief doctor here," she hissed, looking around the hallway to make sure nobody heard. "You need to write a new report right now and say you performed this injection yourself under medical supervision in this hospital. If you don't back us up on this, Ridgeline Insurance will deny the $500,000 claim. The bank will seize our house, and your father and sister will go to federal prison." I stood there, feeling the ultimate weight of their tro pressed down on my shoulders. They didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't apologize for ruining my life. They just wanted me to commit a felony to save their skin. Let me pause right here because this is the exact moment my entire world hung in the balance. If you were in my shoes, standing under those hospital lights, would you have signed that fake report to keep your own blood out of prison, or would you have walked away? Drop your raw thoughts in the comments right now, because I want to see how you would handle this level of family betrayal. And if this story is hitting you hard and you believe in standing up for your own dignity, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now so you don't miss how this battle ends. My mother gripped my wrists even tighter, waiting for me to nod, completely blind to the trap they had built for themselves. She actually thought her tears could manipulate a chief surgeon who spent years scrubbing toilets because of her lies. I looked down at her hands on my scrubs, then looked my father dead in the eye, and felt the last shred of my childhood burden evaporate into the sterile air. I looked down at my mother's fingers digging into my skin and felt nothing but an icy clarity. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled my wrists away from her desperate, Boktuang grasp. The smell of her expensive perfume mixed with the sterile hospital air felt toxic. My father stepped forward, his face twisting into that familiar, judgmental expression I knew too well. He cleared his throat, pointed a finger at me, and started playing his favorite moral card. "Daisy, Look at me. He barked in a harsh whisper that echoed off the stainless steel trash cans. Lily is your biological sister. Your own flesh and blood. Are you seriously going to stand there and watch your sister's career and our entire family legacy go down the drain? You have always been so cold, so incredibly selfish since you were a little girl. This is family, Daisy, and family protects each other no matter what. I didn't blink, and I didn't let a single tear slide down my cheek. I just stood there in my sweat-stained surgical scrubs and stared into their hollow eyes. These were the exact same people who hadn't dialed my number a single time in 2,555 days. They never called to ask if I had enough money to buy generic peanut butter during my dark years. They never checked if I was alive when I was working 3 back-to-back shifts just to pay my BU tuition. They had completely erased me from their lives. And now they wanted me to commit a felony for them. 7 years, Dad, I said, my voice cutting through the hallway like a surgical blade. You haven't asked me a single question about my life since the night you kicked me out. And your very first question tonight is asking me to forge a federal insurance document? My mother started weeping again, reaching for her leather handbag on the waiting room chair. Please, Daisy, we will lose the Cape Cod house, she whimpered, wiping her smeared mascara with a paper towel. The bank will foreclose on everything, and we will be completely ruined. But I was already 2 steps ahead of their trow game. I reached for the plastic medical chart clamped to the end of Lily's recovery bed. I flipped past the heart rate logs, past the medication schedules, and pulled out a fresh, crisp document. It was an official refusal of falsification and fraudulent claim notice. I had demanded the hospital administration board witness and timestamp this paper exactly 10 minutes before I stepped out of the OR. I held it up right in front of my father's pale face, letting him read the bold black letters at the top. It's already over, I whispered, watching his eyes scan the page as his jaw went completely slack. I have already formally logged that Lily's injuries were caused by an unlicensed, illegal back alley procedure. The hospital board has already transmitted this file directly to the state registry. There is no report to rewrite, and there is no insurance money coming to save you. The look of absolute shock on their faces was the most satisfying, freeing moment of my entire life. They thought they could use me as a shield, but they had just walked straight into my paper trail. I clipped the chart back onto the bed, turned my back on their frantic shouting, and walked toward the double doors where Ethan was waiting. My mother screamed as I walked away, but the heavy doors of the waiting room were already swinging open. Ethan stepped into the bright lobby first, his calm presence cutting right through the chaotic noise. Right beside him was my attorney, Marcus Webb, carrying a heavy navy blue leather briefcase. But they weren't alone. 2 sharp-faced investigators from the Massachusetts Board of Registration in Medicine walked in behind them. With them were 2 federal agents from the FBI's Healthcare Insurance Fraud Division, flashing their gold badges. My father took a violent step back, his hand hitting the plastic magazine rack on the wall. Marcus opened his briefcase on the nurse's reception counter and pulled out a thick, bound document. It was our finalized credential verification and medical indemnity report. Mr. and Mrs. Knox, Marcus said, his voice flat and professional under the buzzing fluorescent lights. This official forensic file contains 7 years of bank statements, customs forms, and handwriting analysis. It proves every single signature under Dr. Daisy Knox's name at Lily's spa was completely forged. Your daughter Lily and both of you executed these fabrications to bypass medical safety laws. My mother's face went completely wild with rage. She lunged across the linoleum floor, her acrylic nails clawing to tear the papers out of Marcus's hands. One of the FBI agents blocked her instantly, his grip firm on her winter coat sleeve. That is when the lead insurance fraud investigator pulled a small digital recorder from his blazer pocket. He pressed the play button, and the ultimate twist echoed through the sterile hospital lobby. It was Lily's voice, crying through a phone speaker, recorded on a secure line just 2 months ago. I had to forge Daisy's medical ID, Lily sobbed in the recording. Mom and Dad forced me to do it so the bank would approve the $500,000 small business loan. They told me Daisy owed us this because she went to medical school. My mother froze, her mouth hanging open as the audio tape continued to spin. She violently whipped around and slapped my father right across the face, screaming at the top of her lungs. "You idiot! You told me she deleted those recorded phone calls!" she shrieked, tearing at his button-down shirt. My father shoved her back against the vending machines, his face twisted in desperate anger. "You're the one who wanted the luxury spa. Sandra, you ruined us," he yelled back, his voice breaking. They were completely cancelanhao, right there in the middle of the public San Benvien. The federal agents stepped in, pulled out their steel handcuffs, and read them their formal rights. I stood next to Ethan, holding his warm hand, and watched the police lead them out into the freezing Boston snow. The long, suffocating weight of their 7-year lie was finally gone, and for the first time, I could breathe. Watching the police cruiser brake lights fade into the Boston sleet was the last time I let my chest feel heavy. 3 months have passed since that chaotic night in the emergency room. The state authorities moved in fast and permanently padlocked the doors of Lily's luxury spa. The Suffolk County District Attorney formally indicted Lily for practicing medicine without a license and aggravated insurance fraud. She is currently staring down a mandatory 5-year sentence in a state penitentiary. My parents had to put their beloved Cape Cod house on the market for a frantic fire sale. Every single dollar from the sale went to pay court fines and settle claims for Lily's disfigured victims. They are completely broke now, living in a cramped rental apartment, entirely isolated from the community. They keep mailing dozens of desperate, handwritten letters to my condo, begging me to drop the hospital board complaint. I don't open them anymore. I just slip them into a FedEx envelope and route them straight to Marcus Webb's office. The childhood gong-cum of needing their validation has completely dissolved into the background of my daily routine. But the ultimate twist landed in my mailbox last Tuesday in a plain white envelope. It was a letter from my Aunt Patricia, the one relative who had stayed completely silent during the family exile. Inside the envelope was a glossy print of that infamous Christmas Eve steakhouse dinner from years ago. On the back of the photograph, she had written a message in shaky, blue ballpoint ink. "We all knew you didn't cheat on your exams, Daisy, but we were too hennat to stand up to your mother." The note read, "You were completely right to walk away from that toxic dinner table, and I'm so deeply sorry." I looked at the smiling faces in the picture for 3 seconds, then tossed it right into the kitchen recycling bin. The truth didn't need their belated confirmation to make me whole. I turned over the chicken breasts sizzling in my cast-iron skillet and smiled as Ethan walked through the front door. My life was completely my own now, built on solid ground, far away from their wreckage. The transition from a broken daughter to a sovereign woman was finally complete as we sat down to eat. The closure with my aunt's letter allowed me to permanently shut the door on the past. Tonight, my South End apartment is filled with warmth and the rich aroma of roasted chicken. Ethan is laughing by the kitchen island, pouring wine for 3 of my resident doctors. Outside the window, a quiet winter snow is blanketing the brick streets of Boston. But inside, the air is thick with genuine respect, comfort, and the sounds of real family. 2 of my former clinic patients are sitting at our dining table, sharing stories. They spent the entire afternoon out in our small backyard, helping Ethan winterize our flower beds. They did it completely voluntarily, just to show their gratitude for the care I gave them. I look through the glass at the falling snow and realize something profound. The freezing isolation my parents left me in has completely lost its power over my life. There is not a single shard of their childhood ice left in my chest tonight. I spent 34 years waiting to be loved by people who only wanted to exploit me. And it took walking away to realize that family is not about shared DNA or social status. Family is about who shows up, who respects your boundaries, and who values your worth. If you are watching this right now, and you are carrying the heavy weight of a toxic relative, hear me clearly. You do not owe your life, your hard-earned success, or your mental peace to anyone who treats you like a sacrifice. Setting a hard boundary with a cruel child or an abusive parent is not revenge. It is survival, and it is the highest form of self-respect you can give to yourself. You have the absolute right to walk away from any table where love is served as an itemized invoice. Please take a moment to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who needs it. We have an entire library of similar stories about toxic boundaries and justice linked right below in the description. Go ahead and click on one of those videos to keep watching and reinforcing your own strength. Next week, I am exposing an incredible story about a narcissistic sibling who tried to seize an estate using a forged power of attorney during a funeral. You absolutely do not want to miss that showdown, so make sure your notifications are turned on. Thank you for standing with me until the very end of my journey. Take care of yourselves, stay strong, and I will see you in the next video.